Video games are a waste of time. I don't believe this. But the parents of Gao Diping, a 23-year-old from China, has said the same thing when he was growing up. Now, for the past month, Gao Diping, otherwise known as Go-Going, has been participating in the League of Legends World Championship, a multi-million-dollar tournament which just ended 2 days ago. The finals were held in front of 44,000 people in Sangam Stadium in Seoul, South Korea. And this was the home of the 2002 World Cup, so it's a big arena. Now, in addition to the 44,000 people watching at the stadium, there were millions tuned in at home. Now, you could say that these 10 guys on the stage were just playing a video game, but I'm here to claim that these guys, these professional gamers, are athletes in today's society. So my main claim for why pro gamers should be considered as athletes, it's just that the word athlete, it's just that, it's a word. It's a word that we assign a definition to, and based on the attitudes of people, the definition can change. And with the current definition, pro gamers fulfill the criteria of being an athlete. Second, addresses the physical activity that athletes need to have in order to be considered athletes. And I think that this pro gamer's speed and hand-eye coordination is more than enough to meet these criteria. And third is that the high entertainment value that people get from watching these esports competitions is even eclipsing some more major mainstream sports, especially in the United States. So for my first point, the definition of an athlete. It's kind of a person who's proficient in sports and other forms of physical exercise. So what an athlete is, though, it's open to interpretation. Some people consider players of bowling, billiards, even hunting and fishing to be athletes. And then some consider players of the more mental games like poker and chess to be athletes. Pro gamers of today require just as much athletic and mental prowess as many of these sports. Even the United States government acknowledges this. They've begun issuing athletic visas to foreign-born pro gamers who wish to compete in the United States. One of these is Choi Song-hun, otherwise known as Pol. He's a Korean-born pro gamer who resides in the US, and according to a CNN Money article, he's making over 6 figures a year from salary, endorsements, and prize money just playing the game StarCraft 2. So if an athlete's a person who's proficient in sports, then the definition of a sport is also important. A sport can be defined by the exertion of physical skill and by the entertainment value of the competition, which leads to my second point. The physical activity done by pro gamers is just as athletic as other sports. So according to Philip Hubner, a product manager for the esports league Intel Extreme Masters, most professional gamers can reach up to 500 or 600 actions per minute. That's 10 actions per second. An action per minute, or APM, is a common stat in StarCraft. Basically, an action is anything that you do on your keyboard or mouse that corresponds to the game. I tested myself while holding a mouse in a steady position and just clicking as fast as I can get 10 clicks per second. And that's doing nothing. These guys are processing the game at hand, competing against another person, and having to do this accurately. Now the problem is that these players are practicing and playing the game for upwards of 10 hours a day. And this can bring on RSI, or repetitive strain injury, which usually leads to carpal tunnel, radial tunnel, or cubital tunnel syndrome, which can make these players retire early due to injury. So that shows that the physical exertion by these players is just as athletic as other sports. However, though, some sports show their relevance through their entertainment value, not just their athletic exertion. And that brings me to my third and final point. Professional gaming is a sport based on the entertainment value and the growing amount of viewers. On an episode of Real Sports with Brian Gumble, they stated that video games have become one of the fastest growing spectator sports in the world, which may surprise those unfamiliar with these sports, but the competitive gamers of today have shown that professional provides lucrative opportunities. Now, I started the speech talking about the World Championships that were just held this past weekend. They don't have numbers for these yet, but for example, last year's World Championships were held in a sold-out Staples Center, which sold out in less than an hour. And according to a CNN Money article, it it was reported to have 32 million viewers. To put that in comparison, the NBA Finals of that year had 26 million viewers. The World Series of that year had 14.9, and the NHL Finals had 6 million. It's still nothing compared to the 108 million viewers of the Super Bowl or the 909 millions of the 2010 World Cup, but it's a big number that can't be ignored. So this shows that a lot of people are watching these esports events, and they are easily getting their entertainment value from the competition. So that's it. Once again, pro gamers are athletes in today's society. First, because they meet the criteria of becoming an athlete. Second, the exertion shown in their hand-eye coordination and speed is well enough to be athletic. And third, that esports events, as a spectator sport, show that these players are providing the athletic ideals from an entertainment standpoint. Thank you.
All right, well, the propositions clearly identified. The contents are previewed, although when you first present them, they're not really phrased very clearly, especially that first point. It got better in the body of the speech. It made sense what you were talking about, but the declarative statements are a little bit awkward. The signposting is okay in the body of the speech, so it's fairly easy to follow. You've got a lot of comparative concepts that you're reasoning from. That makes sense when we talk about reasoning next week. This will be one of those places where whoever's doing the refutation of your speech has to look and see whether or not these things are in fact analogous. There was some good statistical information about the number of acts that they perform in a minute, that sort of thing. I thought that was kind of interesting. I don't know that it makes it athletic, but I think it's, that's the thing that you're arguing about is this definition of what constitutes that. I think you could use a little bit more information that suggests that some kind of prowess or technical expertise that requires physical dexterity really does meet that measurement. I mean, you at one point say, well, some people think of chess as being a sport or poker, and I don't know that that would include many people in this room. So the fact that some people would consider it is not necessarily an argument that it ought to be considered that way or that that's a valid standard. So I think you could probably have a better argument on that. I thought that the fact that the U.S. Immigration Department is issuing visas for gamers, that's a good piece of factual data that tends to support your position. That it is entertainment, I think, is probably not in dispute. But is entertainment required for it to be a sport, or is that just a secondary consideration? I think there's maybe a place that there'll be some dispute on those particular points. But I thought you did a nice job presenting the argument that you had also. All right. Merci.